What is going on, beautiful people? Thank you for being here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk about something that it turns out I've been doing wrong for a hell of a long time and I've only just discovered. For the last 15 years or so, I've been under the impression that strength and power, which are two pretty important components of fitness, I'm sure you'll agree, whether or not you're a Royal Marine or a military hopeful, whether or not you're a CrossFitter or a functional fitness athlete, or whether or not you just want to develop an all-round athleticism and be a better all-round athlete. They are both pretty important. I've been under the impression that these two sacred components of fitness, strength and power, need to be trained separately, and I've recently discovered that might not be the case. A lot of people who might be familiar with linear periodization will know that strength and power will have their own kind of mesocycles, their own 6-week blocks that they're training with a specific objective being to develop that individual component. Something called conjugated periodization is a little bit different, where you try to train them all kind of at the same time within a given block and within a given week. So you would have strength sessions within that week and power sessions within that week. However, now, and apparently I'm only finding this out because I didn't get the flipping memo, if you structure things within the session properly, you can actually develop strength and power with no kind of loss of each within the same session itself. And the way that we do this is a physiological principle called PAP, which stands for post-activation potentiation. It's basically this idea that if you go through a specific movement pattern, right, like a particular movement, like a deadlift as an example, if you do that particular movement under incredible amounts of load, so basically super heavy, really heavily laden, there's a window of time afterwards where you are able to perform exactly the same movement but extremely quickly, so your power output would have gone up. So kind of the old school controversial sprinter Ben Johnson was kind of famous for doing like a 200 kilo squat, and then 3 minutes later that's when he ran his PB 100 meters. So it's this idea that maximal load, maximal kind of exertion over a huge amount of weight, and then I think it's anywhere between kind of, well, you don't want to do it straight away after, but from 2 minutes after to 6 minutes after, anywhere in that 4-minute window, your potential power output is higher. So earlier today, I hit the gym with a whole body PAP session with this approach in mind. And within this, guys, I wanted to do a lower body movement, a push movement, and a pull movement, all fairly heavily resisted, and then check this out and see whether or not, as we got heavier and heavier, my power output did increase with a quicker version of it. So deadlifts were the first one, guys, as you see here, working up in 20 kilo increments to start with, then going up in 10 kilo increments. And I think the first moderately heavy set, the first kind of working set of deadlifts that I did was a heavy 3 at about 170. And then what I did is I rested about 2 minutes, and then I did these reactive broad jumps. So I'm on my knees, snapping up onto my feet, trying to minimize the contact time with the ground. That's a super important part of this as well. And then jump as far as I could. And from this position, I was aiming for kind of about 3 meters, and I didn't quite get it. I didn't get it at 170. My next loaded set, I did another heavy 3 at 190. Then once again, about 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes. Then jumping on to the turf again to do exactly the same reactive broad jumps. They were definitely getting better, but didn't quite get the 3 meters. And then at this point, guys, in theory, you're getting more and more and more fatigue, right? Because you've got more load in your system, you've done more sets. But my broad jumps were kind of getting better from one set to the next. And then finally, my final deadlift set, I thought I'd pull 200 off the ground for 3, which felt, I'll be honest, now that I'm about 2 weeks out from National Fitness Games, a lot heavier than I was expecting. 200 for 3 should feel nice and easy. And it didn't. I did 200 for 3, 2 minutes back on the turf, and broad jumping 3 meters is usually fairly comfortable for me, or fairly comfortable, obviously if we've warmed up and not doing it cold, but overall it's not too bad. But from this particular reactive position, so from the knees up onto the feet, minimising contact time and then explode, that is pretty cheeky. And the 200 kilo deadlift felt super heavy, and I was like, I'm starting to feel tired now. But lo and behold, I jumped 3 meters. And that's why I did it on the turf on these particular lines, because I know roughly how far I'm going and I want to aim for a particular point. So overall, section 1 of the workout is now done with deadlifts, and it worked. And it worked. The PAP principle does seem to work. So again, deadlifts and broad jump are pretty much the same movement, just a super quick extension of the hips. Obviously, you also have extension of the knees and of the ankle with a broad jump. And obviously you don't just bring the hips to the extension and the broad jump, you basically throw them through. And it seemed to work on there. So then what I did, rested a couple of minutes, and then attempted to replicate exactly the same idea, but in a push movement. So as you see here, we're doing some incline bench, a couple of sets of 100, decided to do it with a pause for 3, and then 105, again with a pause for 3, although I think the hips kind of threw up a little bit. Again, felt a little bit heavier than I would have liked. But I messed around with a couple of different press-up variations, but the ones that you've got here are the Superman press-ups, where exploding up, making sure, again, you don't just take the elbows to an extension point, you're taking them through. That's what generates enough force for you to leave the ground, throwing the arms up, throwing the legs up into kind of a Superman pose, and then dropping down. And this one is harder to measure because, you know, we're not using force plates, we're not doing anything on the ground. This wasn't effectively being measured at all. All I can say from my experience is that kinesthetically, after my third set, I felt pretty nice and flipping bouncy, to be honest. And again, although in theory you're building this fatigue level, right? You've got more and more load and more volume in your system that session, but somehow, well, again, that's kind of the principle. I guess it makes sense. And one of the amazing things I will say about this PAP principle, guys, is so I spoke to Ben Simon's master's degree in exercise physiology. 2 Olympics under his belt, and going to be, you know, a treble Olympian kind of this time next year with 3 Winter Olympics in the bag as part of the British bobsleigh team. Phenomenal athlete, sprinter and jumper before that. And he was basically saying there's no drop in strength from doing the power work with it, and there's no drop in power from doing the strength work with it. So it's one of these literal golden opportunities to develop both of these components of fitness, and both of these components of performance at exactly the same time. So then what we did from there is we went and tried to replicate it on the final kind of fundamental movement pattern, and that's a pull movement. So what I wanted to do, I know roughly how kind of explosive pull-ups and muscle-ups feel for me right now. Again, a couple of weeks out from the National Fitness Games here in the UK, and I have a rough kind of kinesthetic feeling of whether or not it feels fairly smooth and how powerful I feel getting above the bar, right? And a lot of that is how much of a dip, how much kind of elbow extension do you need? In theory, less and less and less, that's better, because obviously you want to be pulling up so much that you generate enough force from the pull movement that you effectively fly over the bar and pretty much land with straight arms. That's the ideal, obviously that doesn't always happen that way. So what I did is I did some band resisted pull-ups, messed around with a couple of different grips. I think the ones I'm showing you now are overhand, and I did a heavy 4 or 5 to again make sure, and this is really, really good as a strength exercise and kind of a primer for a power one, because not only are you required to develop a hell of a lot of force, but because it's banded, you're required, I should say, to develop even more force at the top of the movement, right? Because the band's getting tighter and tighter, so it is an appreciating amount of load. That is the great thing about anything that you do banded. You are not necessarily having to generate that much extra force at the bottom, but as you come closer and closer and closer to the top of that pull movement, you're having to generate more force, literally just for those last couple of inches, because the band's so taut at that point. Heavy 3 or 4, couple of minutes break, and then I did both muscle ups and clap pull ups. And again, we've been in the gym about an hour 45 at this point, and I was thinking my central nervous system should be crashing, but genuinely I did muscle ups the other day, a lot more fresh than I did them today, and my muscle ups today just felt so much better. Literally so much more of a snap, and I can feel my back, and it just feels smoother, it's pulling so much quicker, and you just feel like you've got an extra little bit of kind of electricity going through all your kind of your primary phasic levers. You just feel more powerful. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. It's a nice quick one for you, an explanation of this principle, and the demonstration of how I personally would approach it to a whole body session and the kind of movements that I would pair together. So again, any kind of lower body plyo, any jump is perfect for something along any squat and deadlift variation, bench and a push-up and pull-ups and something that's like pull-ups, but you keep going and then land on the top of the bar, right? So it's, again, they're kind of super basic. The movements aren't particularly complicated. But today I didn't feel amazingly snappy at the beginning of the session, but the power work I did feel better. So again, utilize this principle, in my opinion, if you want to get better at power movements. You know, the good news is now you might not have to structure your training week to park strength and just have power enjoy its own session. The good news is if we start to structure programs right, both of these components can actually be improved within the same session. Pretty neat, right? As I said, guys, just a quick one. Hope you did enjoy it. Please do give us a big thumbs up. If you have any suggestions of anything else that you would like covered, other scientific principles, anything, physique, health, performance, nutrition, tech, biohacking, anything under the massive umbrella that is fitness, health and wellness, then please do put it in the comment section below. And if you have not yet done so, please do subscribe. Talking to you right there. Got lots of amazing content on the way for people either serving in or prepping for the military, for recreational bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts, and for CrossFitters and functional fitness athletes. Have an unbelievable day. Stay strong, stay powerful. See you soon. Peace!